So this week, you are going to learn CSS. And CSS is what we use to make our pages look good. And you're going to start with the web-based readings. And it does seem like a lot, but keep in mind that these readings are maybe one page long. So it's actually not all of that much. But this is all of the CSS that we are going to be learning this week. And their CSS is kind of a huge area to cover. So we're going to be learning what I consider foundational CSS, the CSS that works pretty much with all of the HTML tags and elements. And then in lesson 9, we get into CSS3, which is where we'll find animation and responsive CSS and some of the more advanced styling. So this is foundational CSS for this week. So you're going to read the web-based readings, and then you're going to go through the lecture demo. And so we basically start at the beginning, understanding what a style sheet is. And then we talk about the different ways to add style sheets into your page. And I've got plenty of examples. So when we talk about an external style sheet, this is the style sheet that I use for this class. So you can kind of see all of the CSS that I have in that style sheet. And then when we talk about internal and inline, I do have links to W3 schools. So you can kind of practice playing around with them. We get into the syntax, the different rules, and there's not a whole lot of rules for creating CSS. You need an element and the curly braces, opening and closing. Then you need the style rule. That's what you're going to change, and you need a value. And between the CSS style rule, it's also called a property, you will see a colon. And then at the end, after the value, you have to have a semicolon. So the only problem people really have with CSS is typos, or they forget the semicolon, or they mess up the colon. That's really the only issues people have. Okay, so as you work through here, you will learn how to add the CSS, and then we get into very specifics, like how do we change color? And the way we change color is we use either color names, RGB values, which is red, green, blue, or a hexadecimal color number. Okay, and so I have links to W3 schools that'll show you color names. I have another link here to color names and hexadecimal numbers. But there's 3 different ways to specify color, and you can use whatever you're comfortable with. I think the simplest way to specify color is to use a color name. But all 3 of these examples would change the text blue. It's just 3 different ways to do it. Okay, and RGB is red, green, and blue. So these are the colors of light. And zeros, if you had zeros on all of them, you would have the color black. And if you had 255 on all of them, you would have the color white. And then any other combination, you get all of the different colors in the color spectrum. Okay, and here is how we would set green. So you can see the combinations for that. And then here's a link to a location where you can kind of play around with this. So the way we specify color is the same, whether it's the color for text, which this is the CSS that we use for that, or if it's the background color. And to specify the background color on a page, you can either just use background by itself or background dash color. Okay. And so these are three different ways to specify beige, basically. Um, and this would affect the background color of the page. So since we are working with color, I thought it would be beneficial for you guys to know a little bit about color theory. Some of you may have had this in, a visual design class, but if you've never had it, it is super beneficial to have a little understanding of color, especially when you are picking color in your pages. So you'll read through color theory. And these different complementary color schemes, knowing these comes in really handy if you are picking colors, like a color palette for your web page. So it is useful for you to read through here, kind of get an understanding of complementary color schemes. The context of color, this is important if you are going to have background colors and text color, because obviously you want people to be able to read your text. And the text is going to stand out better on different backgrounds. Okay, so when you read through color context, keep that in mind. We have background color and we have text color. You will never be tested on how hexadecimal color works, but for those of you with inquiring minds, this explains what all of these numbers and letters mean and how they combine to create color. Okay, so you can kind of read through that. That'll give you some background when you are choosing hexadecimal colors. And honestly, I use a lot of hexadecimal colors in pages because it lets me very precisely pick the color that I want. There are also websites that will help you select color. And so I've got links to a couple of them here. So this is at W3 Schools. And what I kind of like about this one is that, yeah, you can pick the color here. Okay. And it'll show you the hex number and the RGB value. But then you can actually choose a lighter or darker shade. Okay, which I think is nice too. Another option instead of using these colors is you can actually get this continuum of color, which is also kind of nice. If you click away, okay, and you get the shades there too. So I think you can pick pretty much any color you would want using this. Now, if you're looking for a color palette for your website, this is an awesome tool. And the different complementary color schemes are listed. Okay, and so the middle color is the one it's keying off of. And you can kind of drag those around in and out, and find different color schemes that way, and you can choose different combinations. And then it's got the hex values for you. And there are other sites that do something similar. Lunapic that we have already used, there is a command in Lunapic. If you go to the file menu and you select the color palette command, you upload your picture, it will actually pull the colors from the picture and show you the hexadecimal values. So if you were going to have this picture in the background, let's say, and then maybe you were going to, put kind of a white little rectangle here and set some opacity so you could see through it. You could set text colors and all sorts of things and put them in over the top of that white area. How color affects mood, I do have a link here. When you are selecting colors for a site, you do have to think about the mood that you are trying to convey. And so the psychology of color does come in kind of handy for that. And then we're going to talk a little bit more about backgrounds because people do like background images. And how do you put that in? And there are all sorts of commands that deal with the image. Okay, so it's not just saying the name of the image, it's whether you want it to repeat or not, what position you want it in, all of that fun stuff. And then we get to fonts, changing the font typeface. Okay, and I even show you how to use Google Fonts. So by default, people are only going to be able to see the fonts that are installed on their computer system. And so when you specify fonts, you typically do more than one um, because otherwise, if they don't have the one font that you specify, then they're not going to see the page as you designed it to be. And that's why you'll see multiple fonts kind of strung along like this. And it ends with a generic font. Um, with Google Fonts, they will be accessing these fonts from the web. So they should be able to see the exact font you wanted. And so it's just a matter of finding a font that you like. You can kind of click on it. These fonts are free to use. And they typically will have information on how to put it in your page. All right, so I selected one and I clicked on it. And you can see over here, this is the link that I need to put in between my opening and my closing head so that I can use it in my page. Okay, so this actually pulls that font in. And then if you scroll down, it's showing you the CSS that you need to use or add so that you can use that font. And there's actually a copy button, so you can copy this. Okay? And I would copy both and then paste them into the appropriate areas in your page. So using Google Fonts is pretty easy. Okay, and so here's my example. This one, right after where it says CSS question family equals, this is the name of the font. Okay, so this is what Lobster looks like. And you can see that in my little internal style sheet here, I added that font followed by a generic. And the only reason they'd use the generic is if this Google font site was down for some reason. In addition to adjusting the typeface, you can also adjust the size. The weight, this is basically bold facing. Okay, so these are the values you can use, or you can use numbers. The higher the number, the heavier the text. Okay, so you can kind of read through this. Text shadow, this is a CSS3 property, but I had to show it to you guys now because it's so cool. You can actually use light text and apply a shadow to it so you can see it better. So, and you can make it so that it's not blurry, like this example. And here is the shadow that I applied. Or you can do a slight blurring, and that's what this example does. Not only that, but you can use that text shadow to actually outline your text. And so if you're going to do that, there's a very specific sequence you need because it's moving the line for the shadow to the left, okay? And then it's moving it up and down and to the right, and that's how you're getting the lines around it. Text decoration is for underlining, and you can set it to none, so you won't have any underlining. But you also can set it to like a wavy line or dots or however you want that underline to look. Horizontal alignment, this is something you're going to use quite often if you want to center align your text. That's typically used for headings. Vertical alignment is often used inside tables if you want the text to be in the middle of a cell. That's where I've seen it used most often. You can indent your text. You can add space between letters. And so for those of you who have had typography, you can do that same little effect in CSS. Okay, and all you have to do is letter spacing. You can also do your space between words. Extra spacing between lines, so you can adjust the tracking. And it's the line height property that you would change. Okay, and so as you read through this, you will learn more about, adjusting things on your page. What we're learning in this unit is the most basic CSS that you will be using most often. Okay, once you're done, you are going to then go into the textbook assignment where you're going to practice using this CSS. So this is more directive. You will see there are videos in each one of these tasks. And we start out with creating our folder structure. And then there are some files you'll be copying and some graphics. Okay? And then you will be adding CSS to various pages. And the directions are here along with the video. At the very bottom, okay, it tells you how much all of these tasks are worth as far as points. And when you're done, you are going to transfer them to the web and then go back into the Dropbox and enter done. Once you're finished with that, you're going to work on the lab assignment. And the lab assignment involves taking that detail summary page that you created last week and adding an internal style sheet to it. So you need to come up with a color palette for your page. And then you are going to add CSS to an internal style sheet. And these are the CSS properties that you need to set. Here is an example of one that I did. And yours is going to end up looking similar. Okay, and there is a video that kind of walks you through all of this. Then once you're done with that, you're going to update your assignment page with links for this lesson. So you'll add the textbook links and you'll also add the lab links. Then in addition to that, you need to select a color scheme for your links, and you're going to create an external style sheet. And you're going to link the style sheet into your assignment page. Okay, so in the external style sheet, you are going to have a minimum of these styles. So for the body tag, you need to have font family and font size. For A link, A visited, A hover, A active, these are the CSS properties you need to set. Okay, so as you go through here, you'll be setting these properties. I did create an example. This is an example of a page, and here's the CSS I used. Okay, so you will have your detail summary page with an internal style sheet and your assignment page with an external style sheet. Going to get all of that transferred up to the web, and then going to enter done in the Dropbox. The only other thing that you need to complete for points is the discussion forum, CSS research, CSS is a huge topic. So as I mentioned, we get into basics here, but we do not get into CSS3 yet. Showed you a couple of CSS3 things early, but most of it we kind of wait until lesson 9. So if there's something you want to learn more about, you can do some research on it. And then you're going to kind of share with the class what you discovered. So you'll research a CSS property, provide a link to the article or video that you used, explain the purpose of the CSS, how it can be used in a page, and then you're going to read the postings from the other students and reply to one. So I'm going to pause this and I'm going to add a discussion one for an example. So here's my little example. I discovered this, a couple years ago. It's newer CSS that has not been folded in to CSS language officially. So here's a link to it. And basically what it does is it allows you to add a stroke color around your text. So if you're familiar with Adobe Illustrated, you know that there's stroke and fill colors. So this kind of works the same way. Because it's not officially adopted, you end up having to prefix it with WebKit, but the commands are text stroke and text fill color. Okay? And for text stroke, you give it the size of the line and the color. And then for text fill color, you're just giving it a color. And so you can actually use this in your CSS instead of using the text shadow with all of the settings to create those lines. Okay, you can use this text stroke instead. Okay, and then you can use the text fill color to fill it in. So it's just kind of a cool newer thing in CSS that I wanted to share with you. So once you are done with the discussion forum, then you will go back into the course and you'll notice there's a little survey for you guys to fill out. And that little survey basically is just kind of for me to look at so that I know if there's any areas that you need more assistance on. So as you're working through this week's material, I think you're going to have a really fun time with it because CSS is kind of awesome. If you do run into any problems or if you have questions, let me know. And the only real problem that people have is that sometimes the CSS isn't applied to their page. And that's normally because of the upper and lowercase sensitivity that we have when we put things on the web. So everything is case sensitive when you view it live online. If you view a page offline, it is not case sensitive. So that's usually what people have trouble with. But I did create a little video that explains common problems. So if you are not seeing your CSS or you're having issues, please watch that. You can also reach out to me. And as long as your page is transferred to the web, I can take a look and help you.